so many of my ideas about film, conceptually, formally, films that inspired me are all in this film. Like so many of my ideas that I've been percolating on and experimenting with, like so much of it is now fully fleshed out in this film.
How are things with Jeremy?
It feels like somehow I'm cursed.
Congratulations on the film, Blue Heron. It is debuting in Australia at MIFF. It was such an extraordinary film. It's one of those films where I immediately had to text my parents afterwards and say, you need to watch this as soon as you can. Here is my Criterion channel login. But I wanted to ask you, what was the last thing that you watched, just to kick things off?
It's actually, I've watched less movies this year than any other year in my life, which has been quite devastating for me because I love to watch films, but I now, because I'm at MIFF for a good chunk of time, I actually get to watch films at the festival. So last night I watched Nuisance Bear, which is a film that two of my friends from Toronto made, but I had not seen yet because it premiered at Sundance and I just hadn't had a chance to actually see it. So I saw it with a packed audience last night, and it was gorgeous. It's like a beautiful documentary, nature documentary about Churchill, Canada, and about the relationship between the land and the people and the polar bears. It's really stunning.
I'm glad you got to watch it. I'm sorry it was like a 30-hour flight maybe to get to a film that was made so close to home, but hey, you got there in the end. So look, that's the most recent thing you've watched. I'd love to ask you about, I guess, one of your earliest movie memories, because Blue Heron really draws on your own childhood and family history. And it's a film that really, really deals with how memories shape us. And I'd really love to know, what is one of your earliest movie memories?
Yeah, I watched a lot of movies with my parents and my brothers growing up that I think they had recorded on VHS, like from television, and then we'd watch them repeatedly. And I know one of the films that we watched a lot was The Point, which is an animated film, which is narrated by Ringo Starr, and the soundtrack is by Harry Nilsson, and it's like a hand animated, beautiful, beautiful film about, fitting in, and I don't know, it's a lovely like moral for a children's movie. So I think that's an early positive memory.
There was a lesson. You caught the lesson, didn't you?
Right, Dad, I caught it.
Well, what do you think it was?
With Blue Heron, it's filled with all of these little things that make up childhood, certain sounds like sprinklers, lawnmowers, songs that you hear in the background, just really ordinary family moments. How do you, as a filmmaker, even begin to recreate a memory? Not just what happened, but I guess how it felt.
I think that I don't approach it from a place of recreation. Actually, I approach it from a place that feels honest to my experience, but it's not necessarily coming from a place of trying to accurately depict something. It's more, I think, I have a lot of memories of playing with water balloons and these kinds of like vivid summer memories, but I'm not trying to recreate the actual scenario. It's just the atmosphere, the feeling. I think it's very much based on the emotional feeling of trying to transport someone into a time. And I think it can be a bit of a mistake to try to recreate because then you focus on the wrong things. And so when I was writing the script, I was really fixated on things like sound and things like color and how those are the vivid things when you're actually thinking about memory. So whether or not these scenes are accurate to my actual memory or not, it's not really that relevant to me anymore because I don't know. Frankly, I don't know anymore. Like, I think that's part of the subjectivity of the film that I was trying to play with is, I think, memory, because it is subjective from your own point of view. There's no such thing as like a true depiction of memory, I think. And the way I remember something compared to someone else could be entirely different. And so I think the accuracy of memory is a bit too fallible to actually try to depict. So it's more about how can I cinematically bring a person into a space that feels real and it feels like it's actually you're walking into a memory. So that's the trick, I think.
You and fellow Canadian filmmaker Nathan Fielder have really carved out a niche of maybe not quite the extent of his recreations, but no, it was very familiar just for me as an audience member, despite have never even been to Canada. You mentioned then the the fallibility of memory and, trying to capture that. It's not about recreation. Those moments that we spoke about, though, they really made me think of some of my favorite depictions of memories in film. Like Tree of Life is something that obviously comes to mind, where you get these little moments and collages. I was wondering if there is a film that you've seen, whether it's factual, whether it's dramatic, that has depicted memory in a way that's really stuck with you, something that you really admired and maybe I don't know, displayed it really differently, and you were like, wow, that's such a unique take on memory.
I mean, yeah, Tree of Life was definitely a film that I was looking at in terms of its sense of atmosphere. And I read the script when I was developing my script, just to see how he had conceptualized it, because it's the kind of film that once you read the script, you can see that this is made by someone. Only he could have made this film from this script. It gave me permission to write a script that was in that vein of like the vision of the film is nuanced to the degree that if someone else tried to make this film from this script, it would be so different. It's really like based on a lot of sound, atmosphere, and even shots that I had conceptualized early on. But I mean, film and memory, I think, is so intrinsically tied, because everything that happens in a film is something that already occurred in the past, and so there's a real metatextual concept to every film, because even the making of the film is something that's in the past, and the memory of creating that. So I don't really differentiate between documentary and fiction for that reason, because it's all kind of baked into this like experience of trying to capture something that happened, whether that's fiction or documentary or memory or fiction. It's like it's all so blurry that I feel like it's just a different way to engage with like the human experience. And I love that flexibility and limitation, because I think you have to admit that we're limited. We don't actually have the ability to depict real life. It's always going to be a construction. So I find that actually very liberating as a filmmaker.
Yeah, and on that metatextual note, the opening shot of this film, we see an iPhone. There are cameras all throughout this film, whether it's the family camcorder, the father's still photography, the documentary camera from the second half. There's this real comfortableness that you've displayed in your shorts and also this film about being able to capture moments and not feel almost you have to perform. Did growing up in front of your dad's camera kind of teach you about that way that images and ideas are preserved, or reshape, what you will look back upon?
I think you're totally right. Yeah, I think it took me a while to even understand that about myself, that having grown up not only with a dad that was constantly documenting me and my surroundings, but also doing it in a way that had zero interruption or desire to like interfere. And I think that lends itself to how we approach the cinematography in Blue Heron too. We wanted it to feel like there was no intrusion from the camera's point of view. And I think, it really did give me a perspective around how the mundane things are what really make up life. And like, it's not the big moments, it's not the big events, it's all these like little moments that we actually look back on and cherish. And so I tried to fill the film with those moments of, it's not that meaningful on the surface of what's happening, but it's actually a core memory for someone. And then trying to use that sense of significance for things that are actually like on the surface not that memorable to someone else. And was a really fun thing to try to find that balance. But you never know until you share the film with other people if that's coming across. So it's been a really interesting experience to have other people relate to what is essentially my own concept of childhood, and then feel like they are feeling represented by that childhood. So it's all very tangled and I think quite beautiful.
I can imagine the response has been quite overwhelming. How has that been with people connecting with you over a fabricated memory that's built off reality, but it's so very, very relatable? That must be quite an amazing experience.
It's like, when I make a film, I often start from the place of what is the film that I wish existed in the world. And then the ideal outcome is that other people feel that way about the film, but you can't construct that with any confidence that that's going to occur. It's like when people in marketing think they can like retroactively, reverse engineer something, but you know what I mean? Like, you can't reverse engineer like relatability. So it's just, I think the response when people have related not only to the film, but the specific experience of the characters and every character. I think also I've spoken to people who relate to Sasha, of course, but then also people who relate a lot to Jeremy, and also, of course, the parents and like parents who have lost children, people who've lost siblings. But the most impactful conversations for me have been people who relate to Jeremy, who feel, you know, represented not because of Jeremy is purposefully quite vague in the sense that we don't get to understand him, and I think that people who related to him felt, um, so there's a huge variety of responses, but I think like the ones that have been meaningful to me have been people who felt grateful that they found their way through in their own lives, and to see a representation of someone who didn't was actually quite moving and meaningful to them, to understand and feel grateful that they did find their way through. And it's devastating, but also really like meaningful to know that that's how people who actually relate to him as a character experience him.
Yeah, it can be quite hopeful despite all the darkness surrounding him. Now, Edik Beddoes, amazing casting. Jeremy, as you just said, he doesn't say a lot in the film, but he looms so large. I really love the way he's shot, how he looks. He's kind of in the corners a lot of the time. In fact, the only time I think I can remember him looking purely happy is in his father's photographs that we see in the quickly taken at the start. Now, I've read that Edik was street cast. What made you look at him and say, this is Jeremy?
It was definitely, like, first of all, just a presence that I felt that is pretty difficult to describe, but I just knew that he had something very special in his spirit. And then he also really related to the character himself personally. And I think everyone in the film, all the actors brought something of themselves to the role, but especially Edik. I actually reshaped the film quite a bit around what he brought to it, because I think he was the one who made me understand that trying to recreate a person that existed was going to fail, and that I should instead lean into who this person is, this actor, this human being, and allow him to shape the character, and then admit that I was not going to be able to recreate the person that the film is based on. So it actually was pretty profound to find him, because I think I initially went into the film thinking I was going to try to cast someone who behaved like my brother, and it was written to be more like my brother. But then Edik brought something that is entirely different. So it actually removed some of the biographical elements because of that, which I think was a positive thing. Ultimately, the interesting thing though is that people read him and the film as like beat for beat my life, and there's no sense of that there could be a diversion. And so when you make a film that's personal, you kind of have to accept that will be the understanding, even though there's so much nuance and like gray area. But it just is the way that's the positives. The double-edged sword is like people will relate to it and see it as like deeply vulnerable, but then people will also think that they have access to like your exact life. And I think as a filmmaker, I've heard Charlotte Wells talk about this as well. Just this lack of differentiation between real life and the craft that goes into making the film, and you have to just submit to like the audience's understanding, and you can't course correct everyone's opinion of not only your film but of yourself, and that's the hard part.
Yeah, once it's out there, it's for everybody to attach themselves to and engage with that, how they feel. That's so fascinating, and that's so cool to know that you and Edik really collaborated on that. Did you have to go back to your script and really kind of move major things around, or were they more tweaks?
I think it was in the edit partially, but also spending time with him leading up to production and learning about him and what he was capable of as an actor, but also his limitations as a non-actor, and not trying to push him into a place that would be performative beyond what I think was natural for him. And so really just leaning into that, and to not to force things that felt unnatural, but like he brought something that I could not have written. So it's like it's kind of a gift that you have to accept. And I think when you make personal work, sometimes people get caught up in the like, that's not accurate, or this isn't right. And it's like, sometimes the world will give you something that's actually better, more interesting, more complex than like what you were trying to depict that felt accurate.
On casting, you have two incredible actresses portraying Sasha. there's this moment, this huge emotional peak of the film where it's such a swing and, you know, it really lands. It's quite a profound moment because I guess for me, there was this question looming over of, oh, is this happening? It's quite fascinating. I'm trying to talk about it without spoiling it for people.
Yeah.
But there's this well, you know what? Let's just spoil it. where adult Sasha actually gets the opportunity to step inside her past and have her sit beside her younger self. I really love that moment. What did that moment allow you to do that I guess a film that was too concerned with realism wouldn't let you do?
That's a great way of phrasing it. I think that I liked the concept of having a character interacting with the past, but then not being actually able to change anything. Because I think there's a version of this film where, you know, she goes back and she gets to like right all the wrongs and heal all the wounds and give herself and her family the like comfort that she would maybe have wanted, like a more wish fulfillment version. But I was really adamant that that was not the kind of movie I wanted to make. I wanted it to actually be the harsh reckoning and reality of like acceptance rather than it being something that she can resolve. And so having her interact with her younger self, I wanted it to be distinct, that she can interact but she can't change anything. So it's you can walk into this space but you can't it can't impact the future. It can't actually change the outcome, which is how I feel about making these films. You know, I am essentially recreating and walking into my own past making these films, but I can't change what happened by doing that. So it felt like a visual way to represent that. Yeah.
There's such a thorough line from your shorts to this moment. It really does feel like a culmination of you being able to examine. I mean, obviously still processing is a big one, but all of your films, there is a degree of memories and looking, you know, talking about events that have actually happened. In that moment where adult Sasha and young Sasha interact, we see, you know, adult Sasha whisper something. Is that something that was in the script? Was that something that you've actually written down and something that you've wanted to keep between you three, or is that something that?
Oh, what she says, that I actually I let the actors decide. That was something that I wanted them to have their own intimacy and their own sort of relationship between them. So that was and it's obviously it's meant to be an open-ended understanding of like what is it that you would say in that moment, and purposefully, you know, withheld from the audience. And there's other films that do that, which I was also somewhat referencing. Like there's the end moment at the end of Lost in Translation, or
which people have, you know, they've pulled down and they've tried to up the volume. And I'm like, I don't think that's the point. Like, let's not know what is said. That's, you're ruining it, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people want answers for everything, and it's interesting to watch people when they don't get the answers. It's like there's sort of an entitlement to want things that are not like intentionally being withheld.
In a world where everything is answerable, it is so refreshing just to have a question looming over a moment, you know. That's really special.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I'm so really taken by the, you know, the hinge of this movie where we go from the past to the present day that the film is set in. And the first thing that really was the indicator for me, despite the, you know, advance in technology, was the sound design. It feels so quiet in the present day. I would love to know about that. Was that something that was out there from the original screenplay? Was that something very purposeful you wanted to create? Because there's such this textured, layered soundscape for the first half, these suburban sounds. And then it's kind of, you just hear like the hum almost of an air conditioner, or, you know, or just really, really quiet, like very inane kitchen sounds. And I'm thinking of all the sounds in the second half. Tell me about that.
Yeah, no, I had such an incredible time building the soundscape with my sound designer, because I realized that we were basically rewriting the film again, you know, adding depth, adding, you know, atmosphere that without, I think, the film would really lack. And we build also scenes that don't exist visually. Like, you know, there's a scene where the dad is on the computer, the mom is on the phone, and the boys are like playing on a piano and fucking around, and you never see it. You never actually, there's implied scenarios that you can create in sound, and I love that. It's like another way to add you know, the implication of things that you never see. And that's so much of, I think, how I was conceptualizing, memory was just there's things that you never see that you can still remember, and there's things that you never that you never see but you can remember the sounds of. And I think when people watch the film and they hear like the lawnmowers and these things, it actually does transport us back to our childhoods. But we also still hear lawnmowers now as adults. But why do we associate that with childhood? I think we're a little bit more attuned to the world when we're kids, and those sounds feel more vivid to us. Whereas as adults, I think I don't know, maybe it's that we get drowned in our own thoughts a little bit too much because we're so much more conscious of like time and time passing. And it's I find personally like I'm often trying to create more sounds around me to not be in silence. Like
Me too.
I'll play like something just in the background. Like I have a AM FM radio that I'll just have on in the background, or I'll have whatever it is, just like the background noise. And I think I wanted to remove all that in the second half to have her sit with that silence and that sort of intensity of the isolation that she's feeling and the sort of trap that she's in. Yeah.
It's so stark. It almost gives the second half this real procedural like energy, which sounds, I don't know, maybe kind of stupid, but it just feels very stark and very, okay, this is what's happening. Very, very clinical. It's so effective. Blue Heron really does feel like a bit of a culmination of your shorts and to where we are now. Do you think that it feels like this could be the beginning of something new for you? Because there's that, that cliche line about music where people say, oh, you have your whole life to write your debut album and then you've got 18 months to make your second record. And it feels like and that's why, bands are so reticent sometimes to, after a classic debut album, it's very, it's for films, it's for everything. It feels like a life's work is in this first film. How does the return to filmmaking post Blue Heron feel to you? Is it something that you're excited about? Are you terrified? Do you feel like you might draw from that well again?
I think it's both of those things, excited and terrified. The terror doesn't come from like any other place besides just wanting to feel as strongly about whatever it is that I do that I did about this film. And like you said, this is such a culmination of like not only my work but my life. This is kind of, these are so many of my ideas about film conceptually, formally, films that inspired me are all in this film. Like so many of my ideas that I've been percolating on and experimenting with, like so much of it is now fully fleshed out in this film. And I made exactly the film I wanted to make. If anyone feels something about it is intended this way or that way, that's the reading that's completely up to them. But like it is as I intended it. So I feel very strongly about the film, and I feel like it's exactly it expresses the ideas that I wanted to express to how I wanted to express them. And so now the challenge is trying to attach myself to a project that feels worthwhile and feels expansive and challenging and does take me into a new place as an artist. And I'm going to be very fickle about what that is. So it's I have ideas and there's things I could start to develop, but there's nothing that I've been completely fallen in love with.
That's so great to hear that it is exactly the film that you envisioned. That's so rare. So congratulations on achieving that. Look, Sophie, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. This film is truly special and extraordinary, which I'm sure you will never get sick of hearing. And congratulations. I'm so glad you shared that story and your family story with us all and are now trusting us with that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wonderful conversation.